Welcome to the Mets Pod. On today's show, it all comes down to this. 6 games left to decide the Mets' playoff hopes. Joe and I break it all down. So subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your shows. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Performance, range, style, 3 different ways to make every drive an occasion. Whatever your reasons, there's never been a better time to say, let's take the Cadillac. The all-electric Cadillac family of vehicles, Escalade IQ, Vistic Optic, and Lyric. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined, as always, by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And Joe, I really hope this isn't the last time of the season that I'm introing us because, man, has it gotten very, very real over this last week in the playoff race. As we sit here and record today on the Mets' day off, yes, they are tied with the Reds, but they don't have the tiebreaker. So technically, the Mets are not holding on to the final wild card spot in the National League. All that to say, Joe, how are you? I mean, do we just jump into it? Like, what am I expecting you to give me back here?
I think we just jump right into it because this is something we really need to dive into. And, you know, there's going to be time for big picture stuff. There's going to be time for all of that. But we need to talk about what just transpired and what's going to transpire over the next 6 days and at least do our best to keep it within the confines of that, because I am, frankly, Connor, I know maybe a lot of people aren't, but I am stunned that we are actually here right now.
Yeah, I think the build for this has been so gradual over such a long period of time that I'm unfortunately not stunned, but it doesn't take away any of my disappointment. I am shocked that on our recording day where things stand, right? Because the Mets went 3-3. And quite frankly, if you said, hey, they lost 2 or 3 to the Padres and they took 2 or 3 from the Nats, everybody would sit there and be like, yeah, that's kind of what I expected. I think there's 2 reasons the perception is what it is right now. A very fair perception, Joe. One, they took 2 or 3 from the Padres, and then inexplicably, they lost 2 or 3 from the Nats when in reality, they could have won all 3, and they definitely should have won 2 of 3. On the other side of it is, and yes, that, postseason clinching hangover is real. I don't think anyone expected the Cubs to just lay down and die after they got into the playoffs. Credit to the Reds. Like, the Reds know they have to win every single game almost from here on out, and they are. They just swept the Cubs in a 4-game slate. I thought there would be a world where the Mets are up a game, up 2 games, and we're going to be sitting there in that Miami series and be like, oh, man, this is really, really sweaty right now. We're sitting here, Joe, with a different perspective. The Mets got to win at 4, at a minimum, probably 5 of these games. It has totally changed because of not only how the Reds have played, and I will reiterate how the teams have played against them, and the Mets have not taken care of their business, which has kind of been the theme of almost 4 months right now.
Can the Cubs lay down for the Mets too? That'd be really nice.
Well, you know how that goes.
Something tells me it's not going to go that way. But look, Connor, this is the reality of, a couple weeks ago, I think I said on the show, we can't sit here and just look in the rearview mirror. The Mets control their own destiny. They no longer control their own destiny. The Mets not only need to win, but they now need help from other teams. Right. And the Reds do not have a particularly difficult schedule the rest of the way. They're facing St. Louis, and then I believe they're closing with Milwaukee, who has more or less wrapped up, I think, what they're going to be for the playoffs. So
they have the Pirates.
Yeah. Oh, they have the Pirates, not the Cardinals.
They have the Pirates, yeah.
The Giants have the Cardinals,
yes.
My bad.
We're watching too many teams.
Way too many. And realistically, the Mets shouldn't be in this position. And the way that they played in that national series, because as you said, it would be great to be on this show recapping a really good weekend, and especially coming off the Padres series where that was good, pulling 2 out of 3.
Right.
Like, they played good baseball. Obviously, game 2 didn't go their way, but they played generally good baseball. The Washington series was at times little league on both sides, not just the Mets, but the Nationals as well. And the Mets' inability to come through in the big spots cost them. Brandon Nimmo, bases loaded, 1 out with the chance to win the game. You can't have a strikeout.
It just can't happen. It can't.
Yeah. And then you go into Sunday, you're facing a tag team or piggyback, whatever you want to call it, of Irvin and Mitchell Parker, who combined for an ERA of 5.8 this year, and the Mets can't touch them. And of course, there's some bad luck in there too. Jacob Young's playing freaking hacky sack with a baseball and pulls that one down. He robs Alvarez of a home run. But the Mets shouldn't have been in a position where those things decide the game, and it did. And the Mets this year, for most of the year at least at this point, because the beginning was awesome, and then from mid-June on, it's been a struggle. They're losing to these bad teams routinely. So I guess that begs the question: how good really is this Mets team? We have constantly said talent. There's so much talent. There's so much talent. But how good of a team are they?
Right. I think the Mets, for so long, I thought they were the hardest team to figure out in baseball. And I think watching every game like we do and doing a podcast every week like we do, I think I have finally, with 6 games left, figured out the blunt truth about them. The Mets are talented enough to play up to anyone. And that's why you have games where against the Phillies' top starters, against some of the best starters in baseball, they can knock those guys out in under 5 innings pretty easily. But the Mets are also flawed enough that they lose games that they should never even be grinding out to try to win routinely. And it's just so many different ways, Joe. It's defensive miscues. And it's on routine stuff, like the Pete Alonso era at first base. And Pete is far from the main culprit here.
Right.
That's just the one that comes to mind. I was there Friday night when the ball just popped out of Jose Siri's glove, or when he took the worst angle to the ball going the other way in the right field gap that I've ever seen. Those are things to me that, and Cedric Mullins is here to give them something in center field, and he's not making the spectacular plays that he's made when he was a younger player. So, and maybe that's lack of comfort in the ballpark. Maybe that's he's just spiraling because he's been really bad since he got here. I don't have the answers of the why, but I have the answers of the how and what they are, because the Mets there's enough sample size that they have showed us what they are. The margin for error is so slim with this team right now, and it doesn't matter who they're playing. And quite frankly, it feels so often that they're in so many games where you're just waiting for Pete Alonso or Juan Soto to get up to the plate. That is how I feel as a fan that has watched 90% of the games live this year, at least, where I sit there and I go, how quickly can we get through the order that Soto or Pete can make something big happen? And when those guys are hot, they can carry an offense. But Lindor's been just okay this year, and Lindor is very low on the list of issues this year. Nimmo, I know he has some numbers, but the advanced stats will tell you, basically, when the Mets are in close games, his advanced hitting is as bad as it gets. And a lot of his runners in scoring position production is when the Mets are winning by more than 4 runs. And that's not just me. Like, you can go on any stat page you want and look that up. It's a problem right now. And the thing is, the Mets don't feel confident enough in the rest of their offense to bat somebody where they routinely bat Nimmo. So you have this issue of the Mets lineup really thinning out quickly. And McNeil has had a slump here, and McNeil's been one of the bright spots of the offense this year, but they're not good enough to survive that. That's the issue here, Joe. So if that's where they are talented enough to beat anybody, but you can't sit here and say they are a good baseball team when you routinely play down to really, really bad teams. And it's such a weird feeling, Joe, and I'm going to do my best to avoid stepping into next year, because we have a lot of winter months for you and I to do that, because this show does not take a break. But I look at it and I sit here and I go, man, I am very optimistic about the future because of all the talent in the system, the young arms. Juan Soto's going to be here. Like, there's a lot of reasons for it the long term. But in the short term, the way this team was constructed, I think David Stearns learned a lot from some tough moves this year. And I think, quite frankly, there's a lot of faces on this roster right now that have shown they are not the answer for that long term that I am going to be excited about one day.
And Connor, also, when you think about, the potential of making the playoffs or not making the playoffs, I wonder if missing the playoffs will lead to more change.
I can guarantee you it will.
Yeah, to get some of these faces that, it's not anything against any of these guys, but the Mets may need to just change up what some of this core looks like. There's probably nothing you could do with Brandon Nimmo, and he's had a fine year. I'm not here to say Brandon Nimmo's been terrible, but he's
right.
like you said, he's not coming up in the big spot. And frankly, nobody really is. The Mets are 0-67 when they're trailing after 8 innings. That is inexplicable. The lack of
You're out of words.
Fight.
Like, you've never seen something like this.
Yeah. The lack of fight to get through that, and something that kind of ties into it that bothered me when Jeff McNeil gets ejected from the game the other day. Maybe it was last week. I don't know. Whenever it happened, when he slammed and said whatever he said and got ejected. Mark Vientos gets ejected. Carlos Mendoza didn't leave the dugout for either of those. And so the fight of this offense to just come through late in games, Carlos Mendoza is not even going out and defending his guys that are getting ejected. He's just standing there and watching them get ejected and thrown out. And now I know that is not impacting the actual wins and losses on the baseball field, but I think it just sums up what this team has ultimately shown, which is a lack of fight or will to come back. And, you know, the manager's job is to defend his players, and the players got ejected and he didn't come out and do anything about that. But that doesn't change the fact that every single time, quite literally, and very often words are thrown around like always this happens or things like that. Literally always, if the Mets are down after 8 innings, they lose in 2025. And it's going to be a very interesting offseason. As you said, we're not going to spend time getting into that because we have a lot of time for it.
Unfortunately, that might be next week.
Unfortunately, it might be next week. But if you want to look at it on the other side of the coin, because I know there are some fans that want to keep some hope, the Mets ultimately just need to win one more game than the Reds do over the next 6, and they're in the dance. So if they're able to do that, they are in. And as you said, if they do make it, you know, I'm not going to be going in with the highest confidence of all time, I would say. You know, last year I felt pretty confident going in, but they could beat anybody on any given day. They showed it against the Padres. They have swept the Phillies this year. So they can play to those better teams. You're not going to have to face the Marlins in the playoffs, probably. So that's not really a worry.
The Marlins, who are somehow 5 games back, it's really
good for them. Yeah,
they played very, very well, which doesn't bode well for the Mets' final 3 games of the season. But I think my take is too, Joe. Even if they kind of scrape in, I think Stearns. And by the way, if anyone out there is listening to this and wondering if Stearns is on the hot seat, I would be the most shocked I've ever been as a Mets fan if David Stearns is not running this team this winter. I just want to make that.
He can't be on the hot seat. And yes, we will break down every move he made. He did not have the best winter other than Juan Soto and Pete Alonso, which obviously are significant ones, but he didn't have the best winter or the best trade deadline. So we'll dive into that. But David Stearns, his job should in no way, shape, or form be in question.
I am surprised that I am not sitting here and going, no matter what, Carlos Mendoza is safe. When I would have said that I don't think there will be a different manager of this team next year, but when you have this catastrophic of like in terms of expectations, anything can happen. Anything can happen. But I'll go back to the theme that, Joe, you just hammered on, and I'm glad you did. We don't stop doing the Mets pod, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We'll stay in the now. You know, it's annoying almost, Joe. There are positives with this team that are, in my opinion, potentially sustainable. Like, I watched the young pitching, and I'm so excited about them. I think even Jonah Tong bounces back and looks confident and has his location back. And these guys, you almost wonder, Joe, if these 3 didn't come up, like if the Mets didn't have the system that they have now, would the Mets even be in a playoff contention? Right? I don't think so. So.
Your rotation would be Sean Manaea limping through, Clay Holmes, David Peterson, Kodai Senga, and then like Justin Hagenman, because there'd be no one else. Tyler McGill is injured. Yeah. So the young pitchers are a saving grace for them. And I am so impressed with what Jonah Tong did in his last start. When we talked about him last week, it was just like, you know what? This is a guy who just doesn't look quite ready. And obviously got shellacked, didn't make it through 1 inning, comes out here, the fastball, and I use this term on Twitter, it was flummoxing. I love that word. It was flummoxing.
That's a good one.
The San Diego Padres, they couldn't touch it. And he was using the curveball more to get ahead. And if you really want to get into like the nerdy type of stuff, the way Jonah Tong tunnels his pitches, everything comes out of the exact same slot. And that's not, as crazy as it may seem, that's not normal in baseball. Pitchers will have slightly different angles for each pitch. And Jonah, out of the same tunnel, has a 94 to 97 mile an hour fastball with that induced vertical break that probably, it appears to the hitters like it's 98, 99. And then he could drop out of the same slot in the same area, a 77 mile an hour down curveball, which metrically is probably not the best pitch in the world. But the fact of just the way it offsets from the fastball makes it effective. So if he's able to throw that curveball for strikes, even if it's just get me over first strikes, it sets him up to potentially dominate at bats. And it just shows that this guy's pure stuff, even if there are still some things to work on from a command standpoint and just overall pitch mix, it shows that he could get big league hitters out right now. And I think he's going to be getting out big league hitters for quite a long time at an even higher level as he continues to mature.
Yeah, right. You said the word mature at the end there. I think it's just a good sign of a mental makeup in this spot, which is so important to pitchers and confidence. And it's been a problem for the Mets over the years, right? We've seen Senga kind of be a guy that when he's going, he's confident. When he's not confident, it falls apart. Nolan McLean has even dealt with some adversity from really the gloves behind him at times, and he's relatively unfazed. And same with Brandon Sproat at times too. So really good bounce back for Jonah Tong. I think it's safe to say, Joe, it's going to be an interesting winter of moves they make, but there's no reason to think these three can't be making up 3/5 of the rotation out of the gate.
It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard though, if you think about it. Kodai Senga is still under contract. Sean Manaea is under contract. Clay Holmes is under contract. David Peterson is under contract. So
what do we always say?
Again, we'll get there, right? We'll get there. But these three guys, whether they are all in the opening day rotation in 2026 or not, they're going to make a mess of starts because you can never have enough pitching.
Oh, man. We're going to get through some mailbag. We got our scoreboard predictions, too. We're not done talking about the week ahead. Because it's hard to play schedule gymnastics this time of year. Like, we could sit here, Joe, and be like, well, the Reds have to play the Brewers, but do the Brewers have anything to play for? But the Brewers have a bye. So how long can you really not play baseball? In all seriousness, I don't, right? Go ahead, Joe.
And it's also not like football, right? It's not the NFL where the Brewers are just going to sit all of their best players for the weekend. You
can't do it.
Yeah. They may have their starters go shorter, right? You may try to limit, I don't know, Freddie Peralta, for example, be like, all right, Freddie, you're not going to go 7 innings. You're going to go 3 or 4, and then there's just more bullpen. But they won't have that same motivation to really go and, come back if they have to come back.
Like we saw with the Cubs.
Exactly. So we just need the Cubs, again, they need to do that again right now. But
now they're embarrassed.
That's a good point. They can't be further. You can't have a losing streak going into the playoffs. We talk about momentum, so they can't have a losing streak.
I'll put it to you like this, in all seriousness, from the Mets' perspective of it. Say the Mets clinched their division a week ago or 5 days ago, and say you had the Phillies or the Braves scratching and clawing for a playoff spot. If the Mets rolled over and got run over 4 times by them and potentially allowed them in, wouldn't you be pissed? If you split, who cares? If you won one of 4, not great, but okay. You got swept in a 4-game series. So I think the Cubs are going to be very motivated to win against the Mets. The bottom line is the Mets have to take care of business. I know the Pirates are awful, but if you want any feel good of that against the Reds, Paul Skeens is starting, I believe, the second game.
Yeah, they're limiting him to like 60 pitches in 3 innings the last couple starts, which is great. I faced him in the fantasy baseball championship this past week, which I won. Go me. But yeah, Paul Skeens went like 3 1/3 of 2-run ball, and they pulled him at 66 pitches or whatever.
Oh boy! All right. I mean, the Mets just got to win, man. Like, I don't know what you want me to turn on this microphone and say. Like, I'm not going to break down the math for you and say, well, if this starter goes this length against the Reds. The Mets got to win. This has been the problem all year. Go out and win. Win 5 of 6.
Yeah, if you win 5 of 6, I feel like we will be doing a podcast next week previewing the wild card.
They got in on Sunday. Seriously.
Yeah, they got in by the skin of their teeth on Sunday. It's not the ideal outcome, but I really want them to play playoff baseball just for that small glimmer of hope, Connor, that the team that has at times shown up maybe could show up, and it ends up being a run that was completely unexpected. I mean, 2015 is a team that I go back to. I know they made the big addition of Cespedes and Clippard and things like that at the deadline, which made a huge impact. But that 2015 team, it was young pitching. You kind of didn't feel good about the offense as a whole. There was just, the Beltran time, not Beltran, David Wright time and Cespedes time, where like you're looking forward to those guys at bat. So in some ways, it's a very comparable team.
I got to ask you a funny question before we go down on the farm and you review the playoff series for the minor league teams. If the Mets got in Sunday, do you think they should celebrate?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay,
100%. I think you celebrate no matter what.
Subdued celebration?
Yeah. Oh, don't act like you won the World Series, but you definitely get T-shirts and hats and.
Well, you gotta get. That's the league that makes you do that. It's the merchandise.
You spray a little champagne, but like you don't need to be assaulting people with champagne. Like we don't need Gelbs to have to shower like 15 times just to get it out. So he just
like sitting with the beer. Yeah,
sit with it like Vogelback did, that famous image of Vogelback after.
I think he doesn't like standing in general, but yes. So, all right, let's go down on the farm. A little playoff update around the horn here, quick, Joe. I know Brooklyn won their championship. Binghamton is in theirs, and Syracuse is done. But at least some of the young bats in Syracuse went out with a bang.
Yeah, I mean, this is as frustrating as things are for the Mets right now, this is, as much as we said we're going to ignore big picture, down on the farm is by nature a requirement to talk big picture because that's all it is. This shows where the Mets organization and the player development staff under Andy Green, who's the senior vice president of player development, winning in the minor leagues matters. And sure, it's not like winning at the major league level, but you teach winning. And St. Lucie, what you didn't even mention, like they made the playoffs. They were ousted in the first round, but they made the playoffs. Brooklyn dominated in the South Atlantic League Championship and took care of business and brought home their first championship since moving the full season ball. Binghamton is currently in the championship. They lost game 1 to Erie. So that's a best of 3 series, and they are trying to be the second Mets organization to win a championship, which would just be a huge feather in the cap to the amateur scouting department that found all these players, as I said, the player development staff, and then also the players themselves that are taking to this coaching and improving. And at the AAA level, as you said, they just missed the playoffs by just a few games. But final day of the season, what more fun to get a home run from Jet Williams, a home run from Ryan Clifford, by the way, over 440 feet, and a home run from Carson Benj. These are guys that could be a big part of the nucleus that is coming from the minor league system on the offensive side of things. And, there's going to be pitching coming along too. In AA, we're talking Jonathan Santucci and Jack Wenninger and Will Watson and RJ Gordon. The Mets system right now is in a really, really good spot. And there's a reason I think that ESPN ranked them number 1.
Yeah. I mean, listen, at every level, winning does matter because you have these guys that come up that are ingrained and accustomed to that's what they do, right? So it's not something that we've paid a ton of attention to over the years when breaking down prospects because typically the Mets minor league affiliates aren't in this position. But I think it's something that is a notable a notable jump this year because it shows off the depth of the system. It shows off the mentality of the system. And I think that no matter the results of this season, the Mets are an organization that I do think the identity of the player matters maybe a little bit more than a lot of other places. And you could feel free to disagree with me on this, Joe, although I think you don't. I'm not being one of those old school people that like it's different playing in New York, but I think under Steve Cohen, there was a mission for the Mets to not be not only little brother from the Yankees, they want to be side by side, but to be with the big boppers that have sustained success every year, like the Dodgers. And to do that requires you beating the Phillies and Braves and winning the division. And unfortunately, this core right now has crumpled a couple different times. And they came close last year. It was a pretty magical run, though. I think what we accidentally hold on to from years like that is how magical the run itself was, but you don't live in the season. The end of the season, I was joking with a friend that's a Braves fan today. because he was saying, he's like, I feel amazing right now. I'm finally not stressing the last 2 weeks of the season. And we were laughing because I am. And we were like, the lead up for the end of the season last year for the Mets was incredibly stressful because they didn't play well enough to put themselves in a comfortable position, and they got it done when it mattered the most. But I do think there is something different about the pressure here, about how things spiral. And what I'll tell you sitting here right now, Joe, I know Juan Soto can handle it, right? Like pretty comfortably. Dare I say, Joe, I think Nolan McLean can handle it, which is crazy to say. But and after that, like, there are certain guys that are faring better than others. Lindor stepped up when it mattered most last year. This is a big week for Francisco Lindor, and maybe that's not fair, but I think it's a big week. I think Edwin Diaz, honestly, has stepped up when we needed Edwin Diaz to step up. But the list is shorter of players you can confidently say it about right now than it is on the the way.
And Pete Alonso, let's add him because he homered like every single day. That's an omission from me. That's a total omission from me. Pete goes through his slumps, but Pete just had a monster week. Pete had a monster moments last year when they needed him most. I don't think, Pete's not a guy that I think Pete's lows are much lower than most star players. Like, he makes these weird errors in the field. There's times where he's just chasing all the time. But I don't think Pete's slumps are pressure induced. I just think it's the nature of a slugger. Right, for sure. I would agree with that. But I think you're onto something here, Connor, where this team just doesn't feel like a lot of the guys are built for the big moment. And you don't know who is built for the big moment until you get to the big moment, not just once, but multiple times.
Exactly.
So Mark Vientos, I think he would be built for the big moment based on last year. But this year, it was obviously really bad at the beginning. Then he turns it on in a significant way, and now he's kind of back slumping. So it's definitely going to be very interesting as they look to build this team now and heading forward, what the core is really going to look like and what these young guys look like. We didn't know that Nolan McLean was going to be able to handle the way he has. So we don't know what Carson Benj, Ryan Clifford, Jet Williams, and all these young guys that are coming up, what their mentality is going to be. But I can tell you this, starting next year, we're going to find out about a lot of them.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the theme of the show right now. And let's take a mailbag question to finish up down on the farm. Rob Sirota, thank you for the 5-star review. Just wanted to ask what you guys think about the Mets minor league affiliates having success in the playoffs. Do you believe that's truly a testament to how much our farm system has improved? And do you think that it sort of creates a winning culture when our prospects experience success like this? We answered a lot of it already, Joe. It's got what kind of sprung this conversation. But in short order, I mean, I think there is something to be said about the Jet Williams and the Carson Benjes of the world that, you know, wherever they go, it feels like the team is winning.
100%. I think it matters. It doesn't necessarily mean the Mets are going to have a bunch of superstar players and every prospect is going to come up and know how to win, but it helps to win early. It's one of those things that, when you do your NFL draft scouting, I know this is a little bit different, but I think of edge rushers. If you sack the quarterback in college, you're more likely going to sack the quarterback in the NFL. I think in baseball, somewhat comparable is if you are winning consistently at the minor league level, you are putting together the right blend of players to win, and that should theoretically translate to the major league level.
Yeah, it goes back to something we highlighted from the broadcast. You know, Ronnie talked about with Jonah Tong making such few AAA starts. You learn how to win in the minor leagues, but it's just as important when you learn how to lose. And I think that it's clear a lot of these top prospects for the Mets right now have the balance of both, where a lot of them have kind of turned into winning machines, and it only helps you at the next level. It's not going to hurt you. It's not guaranteed you're going to go to the major league roster and they win 100 games, but it certainly helps you. You're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SMY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's review the scoreboard real quick, Joe. Over-under push was at 1 for Pete Alonso home runs. We both went over. He hit 3. We both got a point. Over-under push was at 1 for Francisco Lindor home runs. Joe, you pushed. I went under. Lindor went over. He hit 2. No points awarded. Over-under was 6.5 Juan Soto hits. We both went over. Juan had 9 hits. We each got a point. Over-under push was 6 for Nolan McLean's strikeouts in his next start. Joe, you went over. I pushed. He had 6. I got the point. Over under push was at 5 for Brandon Sproat innings in his next start. We both went over. Sproat only had 4, no points awarded. Yes or no, will Sean Manaea get a win as a piggyback to Clay Holmes? Joe, you boldly went with yes and got rewarded. You got the point as I said no. Yes or no, will David Peterson finish 6 innings in his next start? Joe, you said no. I said yes. He did not. Unfortunately, a point to Joe. Joe, you finished strong here. Mets wins was at 3. You pushed. I went over. They, much to my chagrin, inexplicably did not win more than 3 games. I'm furious about this point because you won the week 5-3. And I feel like this really should have been a 4-4, but thanks to the Mets coming up short as they have most of the year. Joe, you basically have guaranteed to win the season series. You're up 72-65. We have 6 games left. Now Jeff did do us a solid. He gave us more categories.
What do you mean us? He did you a solid.
Yeah, because he knows I got hosed on the last one. So I have enough categories to technically come back, but boy, am I going to need a lot of help. You won the week. I'm going to give you the first category. Of course, it's 6 games, 3 against the Cubs, 3 against the Marlins. How many times do we have to remind you that the Mets end their season in Miami? Over-under pushes at 2 for Pete Alonso home runs, Joe.
I'm just going to ride the Pete Alonso train. He had a fantastic week. I think he obviously wants to be in the playoffs with the Mets, but he also sees dollar signs and free agency coming. And this is the last week of the regular season. So I will go over.
Over. Okay. I'm going to push here. I'm going to go 2 home runs for Pete. Over under pushes at 1 for Francisco Lindor home runs here, Joe. I am going to push again and go with 1. What do you like for Lindor?
I'm going to go over again. You said it.
You said he gets it done.
Yeah, and we need a big week from Francisco Lindor. So 2 home runs for Lindor, I think sounds right.
Mark Vientos home runs, over-under pushes at 1, Joe.
Under. I don't like the at-bats that he's having right now, and I wonder how much playing time he's going to get, where they sprinkle in Starling Marte. So I will go under with home runs for Vientos.
I'm going to push on Vientos. I have a lot of ground to make up here, but I agree with you. I'm very worried about the playing time, and he just hasn't looked great. But, you know, if he can get an at-bat against a lefty, the ball could always fly. Over-under is 7.5 Juan Soto hits. I mean, no guy shines brighter under the big lights than Juan Soto, Joe. I would be a fool to not take the over here.
I'm joining you. I'm going to try to not join you on
no,
many
things,
fair. Just so. But this one, I can't possibly give you a reason why I think Juan Soto won't have a big week, and he's been everything the Mets could have hoped, pretty much.
Over under pushes at 2 for Juan Soto stolen bases, Joe.
Over. To me, this is the easiest over. If Juan Soto gets on base, he's trying to steal. That man wants 40-40 more than life itself, so he will be over 2 stolen bases.
I am going to push here because, once again, I got ground to make up, but I do agree with you, and they know it. They're trying to pick off Juan Soto any chance they can get. He's at 35 at the time of this recording. Over under 4.5 Francisco Alvarez hits. Joe, I'm going to go under on this one. What about you?
I'm going to go over. I really like what Francisco Alvarez has been doing since he came back from the minor leagues. It's an OPS over 900. And I think your mood might be a little different if Young's glove couldn't quite catch that ball that was about to hit the railing. But I will go over on the Alvarez hits.
Over under push is at 6, Joe, for Nolan McLean's strikeouts in his next start. He had 6 in his last start.
I will push here. I wonder how deep he's going to go into the game. I know he didn't get some help necessarily defensively in his last outing, but I will push. I think he's able to get 6 strikeouts, even if he ends up going 5 innings.
I'll take the under on McLean. I still think he's going to have 4 or 5, but I think that, you know, guys are getting more tape on him. It doesn't really look to be working anyway, but it's okay if McLean ends up pitching to contact a little bit and hopefully does go deeper into the game. Over under pushes at 5 for Brandon Sproat innings in his next start. Joe, I'll take the over on this one. What about you?
I'm going to push here. The Mets, Sproat's a weird one. Mendoza has now twice pulled him in pitch counts that he shouldn't be pulled at least in my opinion. And he gave his reasons and justifications. I kind of understood the first time. The second time, maybe a little less so. But I think getting 5 innings out of Brandon Sproat's pretty reasonable.
All right, Joe. Over under pushes at 3 for Mets wins.
We have to agree to go over here, right? Like, I think we just have to for the Mets fans, Connor. This is one I think we need to partner up on. Do we want a chance to make the playoffs or not? And if we do, it's got to be over 3. So forget the scoreboard. The priority is the Mets making the playoffs. So I'm going over, and I am trying to peer pressure you into joining me just out of sheer support of our beloved Mets.
I am going to try the announcer jinx here. I'm going to push and go with 3. I hate it, but I've lost the confidence that I had. And I want this Mets team to prove me wrong more than anything in the world right now. Go out, and if the Cubs are playing with a hangover still, and they probably had this day to regroup and get right because they looked horrible against the Reds. I can't emphasize it enough. Their lineup stinks. P. Crow Armstrong had a MVP level first half. He's been one of the worst outfielders in baseball since the second half. I'm sure it'll all come back. I think they're going to be motivated, and the Marlins always play the Mets tough, especially in Miami. I'm going to push with 3 here, Joe, and I'm going to say the Mets don't make the playoffs, and that's our final category, by the way. I do not want to be doing this show next week talking about the offseason. I want to be talking about the Mets traveling to LA to play the Dodgers in the first round of the playoffs. I am begging you, Mets, to prove me wrong. I will gladly lose the scoreboard, gladly, for you to make the playoffs. But right now, you have to earn my faith back, sadly.
Connor, my confidence is not particularly high, but if I'm going over on Mets wins, someone's got to say they're making the playoffs here. And I will gladly give away the scoreboard if I have to. But whatever I have to do, I want to do my part. So Mets, you let me know what you need from me, but I'm riding. There's only 6 games left. It hasn't been the best baseball, but boy, I hate the fact that there's not going to be baseball for months whenever this whole thing ends. So I want to extend it a little bit further. So I'm riding with the Mets. Go ahead, go win 4 or 5 of 6. Get into that last wild card and let us be on the show next week previewing the, as you said, probably difficult series with the Dodgers. But I'd rather that than just the in memoriam of the Mets 2025 season.
Let's close this out with a mailbag question, Joe. Kevin Manuel, B9B on YouTube, because I think this is a really interesting question. What are the chances that the Mets use the tag team throughout the playoffs and even next season? I'm assuming he means the piggyback. Let's ignore the playoff talk because I feel like predicting playoff, we'll do that if we get to do a show about the playoffs. But do you think there's a world where they go into next season and say, and it doesn't have to be Benaya and Holmes, but there is some kind of spot in the rotation that they do that? I feel like it's hard from a roster construction standpoint to do that for a year.
I think the tag team I think that was made by Evan Roberts, friend of the show.
Okay.
I think that's something that he coined. So Kevin must be a fan of the Rico Bronya and everything that Evan does. As far as the piggybacking / tag team of it all, obviously playoffs, I think it makes a lot of sense to do in one of the games. For the regular season, that is not really something they can do right now with the way that there's a maximum amount of pitchers that you could have on your roster. So you can't really have a guy that's like his only job is to pitch with this starter once every 5 days. You see the Mets use 46 or 47 pitchers this year because they just ran out of arms to use throughout the season, where it's not just injury, it's usage. So I don't think it's something that they can do realistically throughout a regular season until the rules change, which that could happen at some point where maybe they allow an extra pitcher and change the way a roster is formatted. Or I think there will be a day. I don't think that day is soon, but I'd love to talk to David Stearns about it if we have him on the show again, kind of get his thoughts. I think there's going to be a day where teams draft and develop players as just bulk pitchers, no starter. You're not expected to go 6-7 innings, throw 100 pitches. They're going to start drafting and developing guys with the idea of them being 3 to 4 innings pitchers at 55 to 60, 65 pitches, something like that. And that is how they're going to develop specific arms. And that could maybe make up a good percentage of your bullpen where you have 2 or 3 guys at the top that are your 1 inning, high leverage, Edwin Diaz type of guys. And then you have 2 or 3 guys that are, we know they can go 3 innings, 4 innings on a given day and kind of build a pitching staff that way. But in the interim, I don't think this is really feasible throughout a 162 marathon.
Yeah, it's a great question because you sit there and go like, is there a world where you could do this? Especially as our combo earlier, it doesn't matter what time of year it is. We always find the combo to do during a show of like, hey, the Mets have too many starters going into spring training. And then we always go, well, it all figures itself out.
Yeah, it's foolproof. We're going to have those conversations at some point in the next few months where it's like, man, the Mets have so much starting pitching, and we'll get a mailbag question of which starter are the Mets trading because they don't have room for them all, and we will just say you can never have enough pitching.
You truly cannot. And once again, there's always a way, as we see, like towards the end of the year, you can manipulate your roster and find a way to do the tag team or the piggyback. It's definitely big in the playoffs, but out of the gate, I think it would just be a 6-man rotation. I mean, it's just as simple as that, and rely on your fresh bullpen arms to carry you through as much as they can, like the Mets did early in this year. But unfortunately, it started to spiral downwards. All right, this is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac Performance Range Style. 3 different ways to make every drive an occasion. Whatever your reason, there's never been a better time to say, let's take the Cadillac. The all-electric Cadillac family of vehicles, Escalade IQ, Vistic Optic, and Lyric. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. And remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. Leave us a review with a question, and we'll look for it for a future mailbag. Of course, you can watch every episode. You'll leave questions there as well on SMY's YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe there. You'll never miss a show. We will be back next week, and hopefully Joe and I are previewing the Mets' first round of the MLB playoffs.